Hi, everyone. I just want to take a few minutes and come on and talk about timelines. I talked about them the other night in my Ascension Alchemy call. And for those of you that follow me on Facebook and Instagram, you know that I talk about timelines all the time. And now that the energy on the earth is really starting to speed up, we're doing so much clearing and integrating of timelines in sleep state that I just wanted to share an experience I had waking up this morning that involved clearing timelines. So let me take you back a little bit to about a year and a half ago when I was living in another location prior to this house. And I was really unhappy in my experience and constantly in my work doing what I needed to do in order to help shift myself out of the timeline that I was living in. And one day I had been meditating and I had an experience where a wormhole actually opened up in my third eye while I was meditating. And I saw myself on an alternate timeline. It was a timeline that I had not chosen because in that experience, it related to a marriage that I was in back in the 80s when I was in my late 20s. And I had been married, and my husband at the time had cheated on me because he had thought I cheated on him, which I didn't. But it kind of brought about this dynamic or this scenario. And if you think about how we plan our life experience as souls when we incarnate prior to this physical vessel that we're in, then you could see that it was all divinely planned because I wasn't supposed to be with him and I wasn't supposed to be in that marriage. And the result of that experience with him and the infidelity was that I made a very strong decision very quickly to leave the marriage. And so I filed for divorce. And in that scenario, I collapsed the timeline for him and collapsed my own timeline. Really, I ended that timeline. I didn't collapse it because a collapse is something different, but I'll explain that in a few minutes. So in ending that timeline, I did not choose to try to stick it out with him and see where the marriage was going to take me. And so what happened was when I had that experience meditating where that wormhole opened up and I saw myself as an older version or look like an older version of me now at this age, um, I could see that I looked really awful. And I appeared to have been very weathered, not taking care of myself. It even appeared to me that I was probably in depression on that alternate timeline, and that it was probably the direct result of me not leaving that marriage and staying even when it wasn't aligned for my highest best good. So while in this reality, I did leave that marriage, that timeline where I didn't leave continued to play out without me because my highest state of consciousness is residing here in this experience with me right now that you're all sharing in by watching this video. So in having that awareness and seeing that timeline open, and it was actually a spiraling vortex as I got to see myself in this altered state that I was in. It was very unnerving to see how awful I looked, like I was really just not taking care of myself. And it made me realize that I was experiencing my best version of my best self in this now moment here in this timeline where my highest consciousness resides, And there's probably at least one or two or maybe three higher states of consciousness that are in my future that I have not yet caught up with. And that goes for all of us. We all experience our reality in that way, right? So those of you that are listening to this is probably your highest state of consciousness that's tuning into this video, watching me now. And then knowing that there are states of you, there are alternate timelines where you're existing in lower forms of your consciousness that are still playing out in old paradigms and old realities that are happening without your highest form of consciousness that we're needing to integrate into this experience that we're having now. So when I had that experience, it shifted something in me, and I was able to make a decision a few months later to vacate that living situation and move into this house where I am now and have been for a year. It's been a year in November, where I've had tremendous growth being here, and it's really pushed me into my next highest version of myself, which I am so appreciative of. But what I wanted to share with you was another experience that happened yesterday, and then the unfolding of that, which occurred last night in dream state. So as many of you know, I work with the galactics, and not just one race in particular, because we are of many different galactic families. We have that DNA makeup in and attached to our DNA. It's in our cells. So we are many different forms of galactic families. And so yesterday I was actually working with the Cassiopeians, who are an 18th dimensional being. And because they are at the 18th dimension, they don't have form. So when they come through, they're just light. They're an experience of light. And I can feel them, I can sense them, I can connect with them telepathically, and they oftentimes bring through like a pinkish, purplish kind of color for me. And they're very bright, very soft, very gentle in their ways when they connect in. And because they're beyond 10th dimension, they don't have a physical form. And when they connect, they're not going to appear in physical form. Those that do are generally residing in the lower dimensions, closer to where we are in a fifth dimensional aspect or version of themselves. And so when I was working with them yesterday, I was working within some aspects of myself that I am wanting to heal, working through some judgments that I hold of myself. I've cleared so much already, but there's still so much that I wanted to work with. And one of those was my issue with weight. Although I lost 90 pounds back in 2000 when I had cancer for the first time, I continue to maintain, but I vacillate, 10 pounds here and there. And so I find myself frustrated sometimes. And now with the conscious shifting of energy in our day-to-day experience, one day I wake up and I feel like I lost 20 pounds, and the next day I wake up and I feel like I gained 40. So, and there is no weight difference, and my clothes still fit the same. It's just how I'm feeling in my physical body. And that has to do with the way that the energy is coming through for us and how we're feeling it in our body, right? Because we're constantly shifting dimensions. We're not holding one dimension at any particular point in time. So when you do hit fifth dimensional vibration in your physical form, you're going to feel lighter. It's going to feel more blissful, more peaceful. And when you jump out of fifth dimension and back into third dimension for a moment, let's say you're triggered by something, then you might actually experience yourself feeling much heavier, because in that moment, you're experiencing what third dimension used to feel like, that you were so used to, but are not used to it anymore, because you're used to now being in, fourth dimension, or sometimes even fifth dimension, which is feeling lighter. So when you do dip into third dimensional energy, it's going to feel like, you've gained some weight if you are used to being in, let's say, upper fourth dimension. So this is something that I've been working through myself. And so when they came through, they were assisting me and supporting me with my continued transmutation of those feelings and emotions and thoughts that I am working through myself. And what happened in my experience as I was taken through this process with them was that I had another wormhole open to another alternate timeline that's actually playing out alongside of the timeline we're on now. And so the interesting part of this one is that I kind of completely forgotten about it, because it resides in my past as an experience in high school. So for those of you that don't know, I studied art as my major in school my whole life. And when I got into 11th grade and did my one-man show with all of my artwork, it was stolen over the weekend, and I couldn't photograph it to get into Pratt. That was the chosen school that I wanted to go to at the time, primarily for, I think, mechanical art or something like that. And I remember I really loved art with a passion, but didn't enjoy it because of some of the teachers that I had that were extremely critical. But now I see it's really all the experience I was needing to have myself in order to navigate to this point where I am currently residing now. And so in that experience, when my portfolio had been stolen, I switched to working with horses, and I enrolled in the program for BOCES after that, which was horse husbandry. And it was held at the Knoll Farm, where I was already working because I was riding there with some of the instructors back then. And in my work there, I was delivering foals and taking care of the stallion barn and doing a whole bunch of things that back there at that time period, which was in the 80s, was very different from what the experience is there now, from what I understand talking to people, because I haven't been back there. But in that time period, I was planning on working for a big farm down in Virginia as a barn manager, because that was my experience in this class that I was taking, and also working at Knoll. And so I had decided I was going to focus on horses, because I had been riding since a young girl, and showing English and Western. And so as it got closer to my graduation of high school, I injured my left knee in a basketball accident in high school. And in that injury, I was needing a leg brace to walk and a stabilizer for my knee. And well, let's just say it was a really big mess. And so I made the decision not to focus on horses, but to go into a program at Farmingdale and get a college degree doing medical laboratory technology, which was like my next big switch in my life, right? And so I didn't choose to go into horses, but that was just one timeline that I played out, which was where my highest version of me was residing. But there, as we know, there's bazillions of timelines that are playing out without you, based on the choices that you might have made, right? And so that timeline where I did choose to work with horses anyway, even though I'd hurt my knee, was playing out without me. So yesterday, while I was doing this meditation with the Cassiopeians, I got to experience that version of me in that timeline. And again, that version was another very weathered version of myself. And for a second, I couldn't really tell if I was a male or a female. I was very emaciated in form, extremely thin. I could tell that I was probably depressed or maybe, you know, bulimic or anorexic, or I mean, I was extraordinarily thin, very unhappy. I felt very unfulfilled in my career working with horses, and it was a version of me at the barn, and I was in the barn just sitting on a bale of hay, and I almost didn't even recognize myself. And so it showed me again another aspect of myself that was opposite where I am now. So that version showing up was extraordinarily thin, which anybody that knows me in in real life and has met me knows that I am curvy. And so that was a very different version of me showing up. And in that moment, I had such a strong awareness that I appreciate myself so much in this reality that I'm in now, that the awareness came to me that I would not want to be that version of myself, because I am enjoying who I am in this experience in this lifetime now, and all of the awareness that I have and the knowledge that I've attained working with mentors over the last 20 years who were, back then doing Ascension, because I became aware of Ascension back in 97. And I've, been open since 4 and working with the Galactic since I'm sure a baby as a part of my chosen path. But this timeline really made me aware of how we are experiencing ourselves in this now moment, in this now reality, such as the version that is you watching this video right here, right now. And in having that awareness, I guess I went to bed last night with that very conscious awareness of all of these timelines that we have yet to integrate into our now reality. And so for us, the experience of integration is having that awareness that that timeline exists and then allowing it to be part of our experience. Or in some situations, integration would be where you have a situation in your life where, whether it's a relationship or a job or a friendship or anything else that is not really working, and it feels like a struggle, and it's a challenge for you to just be involved in it. That situation is a timeline, right? Because your job is one timeline, your significant other, your partnership, your relationship, whatever you want to call it, that's another timeline. Each friendship is on a timeline. Your experience with your pets is on another timeline. And each segment in your day, right? So this is one segment for me on a timeline. But then when I leave this video and I'm done with this video and done posting it, then I'm done with that timeline, that segment, and I move on to another segment for the day. And that might be to see a client. It might be go to the grocery store, whatever that's going to be in my reality, right? So we're always intending toward the next moment, if that makes sense for you. And so when I had that awareness of timelines, I also realized that when we are not integrating and closing out a timeline properly, a timeline will collapse for us in such a way that it can be very disturbing or unnerving to us if we have not created that collapse ourselves, right? So that could be if a marriage is not working out and your significant other asks you for a divorce. That could really be unnerving and be an extreme impact in your life, and that would be the collapse of a timeline. Somebody passing away is another collapse of a timeline. Your job firing you, that's another collapse of a timeline. So all of these things are very, very important in our awareness of our day-to-day experience. So what happened after having that awareness of that alternate timeline where I didn't choose this path and I didn't align to doing my soul work, and I chose the pathway of working with horses, that must have stayed in my consciousness last night as I was dreaming. I was in a dream where I was with my ex-husband, right? For those of you that know me, you know I've been married 3 times. I was always looking for love in all the wrong places. That's why I do this work the way that I do. And so in my second marriage, I was with someone that was not really vested in me and was very, very much vested in themselves. And as always, the lesson is self-love for all of us, right? So this was a very narcissistic individual, and I am very empathic, or was very empathic, because that's all third dimensional reality playing out in our experience. And so in that reality, in that dream that I had last night, there was a circumstance in reality in that marriage that ended the marriage. I had had a car accident um, in on the BQE, and he would not help me. He would not come for me, and told me to call a tow truck and get towed home. And it was late at night because I was having dinner with a friend of mine, and she had already gotten home, and there was really nothing she could do. So I was kind of on my own to manage this, and I was in a very bad area and didn't want to do this alone. So I ended up calling the tow truck and getting towed all the way back to Long Island, and that pretty much was what ended the marriage. But there was another version of that that was playing out where he did come get me, and it, I guess, healed the relationship or healed the marriage, and I stayed in that timeline and worked through whatever was taking place. So last night in my dream, I remember it was like Groundhog Day, that I was playing out the same scenario where I had gotten stuck, except in that relationship I was stuck in, let's say, Syosset instead of the BQE. And it played out several times until he did come and get me. And that was the closure to that timeline, to that relationship, and allows me now to integrate that scenario, that relationship, that whole timeline experience that did not go well for me, right? That ended in a very negative fashion. Now integrating it more in a more beneficial way through my sleep state, through my experience last night in dream time. So what I wanted to share was that we're integrating and working through all of the things that are keeping us from our highest, best version of ourselves in this now moment. So I just wanted to bring that awareness to all of you. And so that in all that you do, you're really tuning into what is taking place in your reality, because the more you're aware, the better it will be for you in navigating what needs to take place in your life, in your reality, without emotional attachment, so you can move into the next best, highest version that is the most aligned version of you. Because if I had stayed in any of these scenarios, if I had stayed in the first marriage where there was cheating, I would have been staying in a reality that was unhealthy for me. And it just showed me when I saw that timeline version of myself that I integrated, that I did make the right choice in leaving that relationship and moving on into a higher version of me. And then again, with the second one, it showed me that if I had stayed, it would have been a challenge. There would have been a challenge in getting that relationship the way that I wanted it to be experienced by me. And again, in making the decision to leave that relationship, leave that marriage, I aligned myself to the highest version of me, continuing down that path. And then obviously this last marriage, there was a lot to do with soul contracts in this marriage, which I won't get into now, but maybe at some point down the road, that had to play out. And there was a support mechanism in place while there was really no marriage, no real relationship in that. And it was more of a friendship for the period from 2005 until 2013 when I asked for the divorce. And you see, it's always me asking for the divorce in each one, which was asserting my power over and over again, which was something that I felt very difficult to do my whole life, and stand up for myself and feed into my own self-love. So these were the lessons continuously over and over again, right? And it became very evident to me when I had cancer in 2000 that there was something more that I was needing to be doing, something significant. And it wasn't until I had a brief encounter with cancer again in 2004 that came into my awareness that I still wasn't done with that scenario playing out, and again was aligning myself to the wrong choices. And well, now that just doesn't happen anymore, which is where my awareness is residing in this moment. So pay attention to everything that is presenting in your reality, because everything that is happening is really here to help us. Everything that's coming up, your dreams, what your visions are in meditation. I know for many of you, I'm working with you in dream state. I'm working with you in your meditations to assist you and support you with that. And that's just part of the service work that I chose in coming back in this lifetime, in this incarnation, to move beyond where my limiting beliefs were imposed on me and stopped me from, existing in my highest form, really. So hopefully this information helps you in some way. The key here is awareness, right? It's our new superpower. Awareness is so important in all you do. And have appreciation for everything in your reality, because everything is really here to help us. It's not here to hurt us. It's not here to frustrate us or make us mad. When you realize the contrast that you're experiencing is here to help you, that is the gift in itself, because then it shows you where you need to refocus so that you can have a better experience. Okay, so if you'd like to connect with me on my live call, my next Ascension Alchemy call will be on January 4th. It's a Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I would love to connect with you there. We do a live Zoom session. You get to ask questions and participate. And it's where I give the rundown of what I see going on in the universe, on Gaia, within our physical vessel, and how we can best navigate that. And I hold you in the highest love and wish you infinite blessings and abundance. Thank you so much for tuning in to my channel and watching this video. Just sending you tons and tons of love today. Bye-bye.